Okay everyone, I am Fivty Travika Sukma. So the people in back, can you clear me to hear me? Okay, good, thank you. So I had a questions for you all. Have you ever had a question in my mind for so long that it becomes the part of how that you think? Maybe even a part of who are you as a person? Well, I had a question in my mind for just like many years, and that's the questions. How can you speed up your learning? Now, this is an interesting question because if you speed up your learning, you can spend less time in school. Yeah, is it true? And if you learn really fast, you probably wouldn't have to go to school at all. Now, when I was young, I learned faster. And this is the beginning when I was very young. When I was in about 11 years old, I wrote a letter to a researcher in the Union Soviet. So asking about the hypopedia and asking about the hypnopadia. Yes, about sleep learning. Where do you get a tape recorder? You put in the beside in your bed. And it turns on the middle of the night when you are sleeping and you're supposed to be learning from this. And good idea. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. But hypnopadia did open the doors to the researchers in others area. And we've had incredible discoveries about the learning that began with the first questions. When to begin the passionate about the psychology. And I have been involved in psychology in a many different ways for the rest of my life up until this point. In 1981, I took myself into China. Then I decided that I was going to be native level in Chinese inside 2 years. Now, you need to understand that in 1981, nobody thought Chinese was really difficult. And that the Western could study for 10 years or more, and they really get very good into it. And I also went in a good different idea, which was talking all of the conclusions from psychological research up to the point, and applying them to the learning process. So, what was really cool that I was in 6 months, I was fluent in Mandarin Chinese. And it took a little bit longer to get up to native. But I looked around and I saw all of these people from the different countries struggling with the Chinese. I saw Chinese people struggling to learn English, just like me as trying to learn Mandarin and other language, of course. And so many questions got different down into it. How can you help a normal adult learn a new language quickly, easily, and effectively? Now, this is a really important question in today's world. So we have massive challenges with environment. We have native challenges with the sociality locations, with force all short of the things going on. And if we can't communicate, we're really going to have difficulty solving these problems. Then this is really important. The questions then is, how do you do that? Well, it's actually easy. You look around for the people who can already do it. You look for a situation where it's already working, and you identify the principle and apply them. It's called modeling, and I've been looking at language learning and modeling language learning about for 15 to 20 years now. And my conclusions, my observation from this, that any adult can learn a second language to fluency inside 6 months. Now, when I say this, most people think that I'm crazy. This is not possible. So let me remind everybody of the history of human progress. In 1960, everybody believed that running 1 mile in 4 minutes was very impossible. And then Roger Bannister did in this 1956. And from there, it got shorter and shorter. 100 years ago, everybody believed that heavy stuff doesn't fly. Except it doesn't, and we all know this. And does heavy stuff fly? We recognize the material using principle that we learn from observation nature, birds in the case. And today we've gone even further. We've gone even further, so you can fly a car. You can buy one of these for a couple, maybe $100. We know that have cars in the world that fly. And there's different way to fly which we've learned from squirrels. Okay? So all you need to do is copy what the flying squirrel does. Build a suit called a wingsuit. Off you go, and you can fly like a squirrel. Now, most people, a lot of people, I wouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people think they can't draw. However, there are some key principles, 5 principles that you can apply to learning that you draw. And you can actually learn to draw in 5 days. So, if you draw like this, you learn this principle for 5 days. And apply them, and after 5 days, you can draw something like this. So incredible. No, I know this is true because that was first driving. And after 5 days and of applying this principle, that was I do principle that I was thought before. And I look at this and I went, wow! So that's how I look when I'm concentrating so intensively. And my brain is exploded. So anybody can learn to draw in 5 days. And in the same time, with the same logic. Anybody can learn a second language in 6 months. How? There are 5 principles and 7 actions. There may be a few more, but these are absolutely core. And before I get into those, I just want to talk about the 2 myths. I want to dispel about 2 myths. The first is about that you need to talent. Let me tell you about the zoo. So Zoo came from Australia, went to Holland, was trying to learn Dutch, struggling extremely a great deal. And finally, people were saying, you're completely useless. You're not talented. Give up. You're not waste your time. And she was very depressed. And then she came across these 5 principles. She moved to Brazil and she applied them. And in 6 months, she was fluent in Portuguese. So talents, so doesn't matter. People also think that immersion in a new country isn't the way to learn a new language. But look around in Hong Kong. Look at all the Westerners who've been here for 10 years who don't speak a word of Chinese. Look at all of the Chinese living in America, Britain, Australia, and Canada. Have been there for 10 or 20 years and they don't speak any English. Immersion per se doesn't work here. Why? Because a drowning man cannot learn to swim. When you don't speak a language, you're like a baby, okay? And if you turn yourself into a context, which is all adults talking about this stuff over in the head and don't learn. So, what are the 5 principles that you don't need to pay attention to? Attention meaning here reflex and memory. And that's interconnected in very important ways. Especially when you are talking about this learning. So come with me on my journal through the forest. Okay. You go and walk through the forest. And you see, sometimes like this, little marks on a tree. Maybe you pay attention, or maybe you don't. You go another 50 meters, and you see this. You should be paying attention. Another 50 meters, if you haven't been paying attention, you see this. And at this point, you are paying attention. And you've just learned that this is so very important, like it's relevant because it means this. And anything that is related, any information related to the survival is stuff that you are going to pay attention to. And therefore, you're going to remember it. If it's related to your personal goals, and if you are going to pay attention to, if you're relevant, you are going to remember, always remember it. So, the first rule, first principle for learning a language is focus on language content that is relevant to you. Which brings us to the tools. We master the tools by using tools, and we learn tools the fastest when they are relevant to us. So let me share a story. A keyboard is a tool, right? Typing Chinese a certain way are the method of the days. That's a tool. Yeah. I had a colleague for many years ago who went to the night school Thursday night, 2 hours each time practicing at home. So 2 hours each time practicing at home, she spent time for many years, and she didn't learn any type of a Chinese. And one night we had a crisis. We had a 48 hours to deliver a training manual in Chinese, and she got a job. Wow! And I can graduate you in 48 years. In 48 hours, she learned many times of the Chinese because it was relevant, it was meaningful, and it was important for her. She was using a tool as a creative value. So the second principle for learning a language is to use your language as a tool to communicate right from the day to day. So just like the kid does. So when I first arrived in China, I didn't speak any Chinese. Yeah, I used it in English. And on my second week, I got into the take that arrived on the overnight. I spent 8 hours sitting on the dining or talking about the guards in it. He took an interest in me for some reason, and we just chatted on the night for the Chinese one. So I understood about him. I understood about what he said, but a little. But what was really cool, that was 2 weeks later, when the people were talking in Chinese around me, I was understanding about what they said. What would happen? It is night on the train, which brings to us the third principle. When you first understand the message, then you will acquire the language unconsciously. And this is really documented now. It's something called comprehensible input. A woman I know from Taiwan did a great English at school. She got A grades in all the way through. Went to college, a grades went to US, and found he couldn't understand about what people were saying. And people started asking to her, "Are you deaf?" And she was, "Yeah, I am English deaf." Because she was filtered in our brain, that filtering the sound that we are similar with, and the filter out at the sound of the language that we are not. And if you can't hear it, you won't understand it. And if you can't understand it, you're not going to learn it. So you actually have to be able to hear the kind of that song. So speaking half a muscle. You've got 43 muscles in your face, and you have to coordinate those in one way. That you make a sound that other people understand about what you are talking about this. If you ever done in the sport of a couple of years, and you know how the body feels, hurts, if your face is hurting, you are doing it right. And the final principle states, if you're sad, angry, worried, or upset, you're not going to learn, period. If you're happy, relaxed, or curious, you're going to learn English quickly. So if you're one of those people who needs to understand about 100% very what you're hearing, you will go hurts because you will be incredibly upset all the time because you are not perfect. Everybody not perfect. If you're comfortable with getting some, not getting some, just paying attention to what you do understand, you are going to be fine, relax, and you will be learning quickly. Yeah. So according to those 5 principles, what are the 7 actions they have to take? Number 1, listen a lot. Number 2 is that you get the meaning first even before you get the word. Yes, you have to. Number 3, start mixing. So you are probably have never thought about this before, but if you've got 10 verbs, 10 nouns, 10 adjectives, and you can say 1,000 different things. Language is a creative process. So start mixing, get creative, and have fun with it. It doesn't have to be perfect, just has to be work. And when you are doing this, you are focused on one word. What does it mean? Well, any language is high frequency content. Simple pronunciation, simple nouns, or simple adjective. So communicate like a baby. And for the 3rd until the 4th month, you are getting into the glue words. That for a little bit of language together, allowing you make more complex meaning. And at the point you are talking, and when you're doing that, you should get yourself a language parent. If you like, can you how children and parents interact, you will understand what this means. So the 6th thing that you have to do is copy the native speaker sounds like. There's a couple of things that you have to do. One is that you hear how it feels and how does it sound, which means you have a feedback loop operating in your face. But ideally, if you can look at the native speaker or just observe how about their face, let unconscious and absorb the rules. Then you are going to be able to pick up. And if you can't get a native speaker, you can use stuff like this, yeah? If you talk about a fire, you can smell the smoke. If you hear about it correctly, you can see the flames. And what you do is you go into the imaginary and all of their memories, and you came out with another pathway. So I call it the same for different path. You come on to the pathway and you build it over time. You become more and more skilled at just connecting the new sounds to those images that you all already have to. And over the time, you will become naturally good at the process by doing the process like this. So there are 5 principles that you have to do. You have to work with this and the 7 action. If you do any one of them, you are getting improved. And you remember, these are things under your control as the learner. Do them and you are going to be fluent in a second language in 6 months. Okay? Thank you.